And a very happy day, ladies and gentlemen. Tim Burgess with Maximizing Results again with Think and Grow Rich. And today we want to go through the introduction, part 2. Now, remember in our last video, what we talked about was Edwin C. Barnes, and this guy named Edwin Barnes that none of us really care about. None of us know this guy's name. But Napoleon says he literally thought himself into a partnership with the great inventor, Thomas Edison. Now, how do you think yourself into a partnership? Well, he didn't just think and then sit around twiddling his thumb going, am I in a business relationship with him yet? No, see, it doesn't work that way. He thought about it and he thought about it and he thought about it until, remember, he says it became an all-consuming obsession with him. That's all he wanted. He just wanted to be the business associate of Thomas Edison. And this queer-looking machine called the dictaphone, right? It shows up. Thomas Edison, he invents this thing, which is a recording device. A voice recording device is all it is. I say that today, right? And nobody wanted to sell it. And then this guy named Barnes saw his opportunity. So he took that opportunity and ran with it and made himself fabulously wealthy financially, but all other areas of life as well. And that happened in his early 30s, okay? So the next story that Napoleon talks about in this chapter on introduction is a story called 3 Feet from Gold. Now, most of you may have heard of this, some of you may have not. But he says one of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting. Yeah, most people quit when one is overtaken by temporary defeat. See, temporary defeat is just that, it's just temporary defeat. Every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. So every one of us, and just be honest with yourself, at one time or another, you quit on some project or some goal when you were overtaken by this little thing called temporary defeat. So he tells a story about this guy named R.U. Darby, and he talks about his uncle. And he says an uncle of R.U. Darby was caught by the gold fever in the gold rush days and went west to dig and grow rich. Napoleon says he had never heard that more gold has been mined from the brains of men than has ever been taken from the earth. So he stakes a claim, he goes to work, pick and shovel, the going was hard, but his lust for gold was definite, and that's his lust. Make sure we catch the wording here. His lust for gold was definite. So after weeks of labor, he was rewarded by the discovery of some gold. And now he needs machinery to bring the ore to the surface. So he covers up this mine. He covers up what he had found. He retraced his footsteps back to his home in Maryland. And he got his relatives and neighbors together and told them of the strike, got together some money for the needed machinery, went back out west and had the machinery shipped out there. And then they went back to work the mine. So the first car of gold was mined and shipped off to the smelter, is what they were called. I guess that's smelter, where they melt stuff, right? And the returns proved they had one of the richest mines in Colorado. Whoa. And a few more cars of gold, a few more of these cars would clear all the debts, and then would come the big killing in profits. So down goes the drills. This is Napoleon's wording. Down went the drills, up went the hopes of Darby and Uncle. Then something happened. The vein of gold ore disappeared. They had come to the end of the rainbow. The pot of gold was no longer there. They drilled on, desperately trying to pick up the vein again, all to no avail. Finally, they decided to quit. They sold the machinery to a junk man for a few $100s, took the train back home, and pushed the reset button. I love what Napoleon says next. He says, some junk men are dumb, but not this one. He called in a mining engineer, to look at the mine and do a little calculating. This engineer advised that the project had failed because the owners were not familiar with fault lines. I'm not familiar with them either. Later in the book, we'll realize and learn about this thing called specialized knowledge. More on that later. So the owners were not familiar with fault lines. His calculations showed that the vein would be found just 3 feet from where the Darbys had stopped drilling. That is exactly where it was found. The junk man took millions of dollars in gold from the mine because he knew enough to seek expert counsel before giving up. Now, how many times have you and I quit something because we didn't go get the right advice? We didn't have the right advice. We didn't maybe have the right plan. We were afraid to push the reset button and go again. Well, we've all done that. Become aware of it so it doesn't happen again. It's not hard, right? So most of the junk men took millions of dollars, right? Most of the money which went into the machinery was procured through the efforts of Darby, who was then a very young man. The money came from his relatives and neighbors because of their faith in him. He paid back every dollar of it, Napoleon says, although he was years in doing so. But here's the key. Here's what we want to make sure we understand. He had temporary defeat. He didn't have permanent failure until he accepted it as permanent failure. And then it cost him millions and millions and millions of dollars in gold that went to somebody else. However, long after Darby recouped his loss many times over, Mr. Darby recouped his loss many times over when he made the discovery that desire, what do you really want? Desire can be transmuted into gold. The discovery came after he went into the business of selling life insurance. So he quit 3 feet from gold and then he goes into selling life insurance. Think about this. So remembering that he lost a huge fortune because he did that, Darby profited by the experience in his chosen work by the simple method of saying to himself, I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because men say no when I ask them to buy insurance. So if you're in sales and somebody tells you no, is that when you get your skills out and you use them? Or is that when you fold up like a cheap suit and go home for the day? Darby says, no. I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because men say no, men or women. It's just the writing in 1937. Please don't take offense. Darby, at the time of the writing, Darby is one of a small group of fewer than 50 men who sell more than $1 million in life insurance annually. He says he owes his stick ability to the lesson he learned from his quit ability in the gold mining business. Have we learned the lesson as we go through life? Have we learned the lesson? Have we learned from our quit ability in something else to create more stick ability in what we're doing today? Do you really have the right goal in mind? More on that in the first chapter, the first principle, I should say, of this book. We'll get on that in a little while. Napoleon says, before success comes in any person's life, he says any man's life, I'm going to change a little bit, he is sure to meet with much, much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. Oh my gosh, he might fail. When defeat overtakes a person, the easiest and most logical thing to do is to quit. And that is exactly what the majority of all people do. They quit. I know a person, he failed in business 30 years ago. He's afraid to go and do it again today. He's afraid to start another business in any way, shape, or he won't do. The hell, you living your life for 30 years ago? He says more than 500 of the most successful men this country has ever known told the author their greatest success came just one step beyond the point at which defeat had overtaken them. Did you catch that? I hope so. More than 500 of the most successful men this country has ever known told the author their greatest success came just one step beyond the point at which defeat had overtaken them. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony and cunning. It takes great delight in tripping one up when success seems so close. What's Napoleon telling us here? Is he reminding us in the very beginning, before we go into the principles of the book, is he reminding us that you might run into a speed bump along the way to whatever your coveted goal is? Well, think about this for a minute. If you hit a speed bump, what do you do when you get to the other side of the speed bump? I don't know what you do. I know what I do. On the other side of the speed bump, I generally hit the gas. So if you hit a speed bump in your business or something, get to the other side of it. Keep your mind right. That's basically what he's teaching. There's another story in this book, in this chapter, that I want to go into. And it's this story. You still wonder how this little girl did it. And I'll go into character here, and it is not politically correct. I just want to warn you of that right away. It is not politically correct. But I want to make sure that I get the significance of what happened in this story across to you. So I'm going to go with what Napoleon wrote in 1937, okay? And he calls it a 50-cent lesson in persistence. He says, shortly after this Darby guy received his degree from the University of Hard Knocks and decided to profit from that experience, he had the good fortune to be present on an occasion that proved to him that no does not necessarily mean no. And once again, if we're in sales, no doesn't mean no. No is when you get your skills out, create more value. More on that later. He says, one afternoon he was helping his uncle grind wheat in an old-fashioned mill. The uncle operated a large farm on which a number of colored sharecrop farmers lived. Quietly, the door was opened and a small colored child, the daughter of a tenant, walked in and took her place near the door. The uncle looked up, saw the child, and barked at her roughly, "What do you want?" And very meekly the child replied, "My mammy say send her 50 cents. "I'll not do it," the uncle retorted. "Now you run on home." "Yes, sir," the child replied, but she didn't move. So think about this. "Yes, sir," but she didn't move. The uncle went ahead with his work so busily engaged that he didn't pay enough attention to the child to observe that she did not leave. When he looked up and saw the child standing there, he yelled at her. "Now, he told you to go home. Now go, or I'll take a switch to you." Now I want you to think about this one. The little girl says, "Yes, sir." But once again, she didn't budge an inch. She just stands there. The uncle dropped a sack of grain he was about to pour into the mill hopper. One of those things where they do flour and all that stuff, right? He picked up a barrel stave. I didn't know what the hell that was. It's a metal rod that you poke a fire with, okay? He picked up a barrel stave. He goes toward the child with an expression on his face that indicated trouble. Darby held his breath. He knew he was about to witness a murder. He knew it. He knew his uncle had a fierce temper. He knew that colored children were not supposed to defy white people in that part of the country. That wasn't supposed to happen. When the uncle reached the spot where the child was standing, the child takes one step forward, looked into his eyes, and said, "My mammy's got to have that 50 cents. The uncle stopped, looked at her for a minute, slowly laid down the barrel stave and put his hand in his pocket, took out a $50 and gave it to her. The child took the money and slowly backed toward the door, never taking her eyes off of the man whom she had just conquered. After she had gone, the uncle sat down on a box and looked out the window into space for more than 10 minutes. He was pondering with awe over the whipping he had just taken. Mr. Darby, too, was doing some thinking. That was the first time in all his experience that he had seen a colored child deliberately master an adult white person. How did she do it? What happened to his uncle that caused him to lose his fierceness and become as docile as a lamb? What strange power did this child use that made her master over her superior? Napoleon says these and other similar questions flashed into Darby's mind, but he did not find the answer until years later when he told me the story. He says, strangely, the story of this unusual experience was told to the author in the old mill at the very spot where the uncle took his whipping. Can you imagine that, man? Think about that for a minute, and you get to witness it. Wow. He says, strangely, too, I had devoted, this is Napoleon, strangely, too, I had devoted nearly a quarter of a century to the study of the power which enabled an ignorant, illiterate, colored child to conquer an intelligent man. I don't know if he was an intelligent man or not. I don't know if she was ignorant or not. I was reading the book, okay? As we stood there in that musty old mill, Mr. Darby repeated the story of the unusual conquest and finished by asking, what can you make of it? What strange power did that child use that so completely whipped my uncle? Napoleon says the answer to his question will be found in the principles described in this book. The answer is full and complete. It contains details and instructions sufficient to enable anyone to understand and apply the same force which the little child accidentally stumbled upon. So you and I can use the same force. It's available to us. He says, keep your mind alert and you will observe exactly what strange power came to the rescue of the child. He says, you will catch a glimpse of this power in the next chapter. Somewhere in the book, you will find an idea that will quicken your receptive powers and place at your command, for your own benefit, this same irresistible power. I don't know about you, I want that power. I want the power a little girl used. Absolutely. But I want that power to conquer what? Probably our fears. See, because fear is the only thing standing between you and anything you really want out of this game we call life. It's just that thing called fear. We'll get to that, and well, that's the very last chapter. He says, the awareness of this power may come to you in the first chapter flash, or may flash into your mind in some subsequent chapter. It may come in the form of a single idea, or it may come in the nature of a plan or a purpose. Again, it may cause you to go back into your past experiences of failure or defeat and bring to the surface some lesson by which you can regain all that you lost through that defeat. He says, after I had described to Mr. Darby the power unwittingly used by the little colored child, he quickly retraced his 30 years of experience as a life insurance salesman and frankly acknowledged that his success in that field was due in no smart degree to the lesson he had learned from the child. No doesn't mean no. Mr. Darby pointed out, every time a prospect tried to bow me out without buying, I saw that little child standing there in the old mill, her big eyes glaring in defiance, and I said to myself, I've got to make this sale. And the better portion of all sales I have made were made after people had said no. So if somebody says no to you as a salesperson, is that when you get your skills out? Truly think about it. Now, we teach our kids no means no. No means no. Damn it. And they get in trouble. But then they go into a life of sales and we're teaching them no doesn't mean no. Think about that for a minute. Think about that. Excuse me. He says, life is strange and often imponderable. Both the successes and failures have their roots in simple experiences. Mr. Darby's experiences were commonplace and simple enough, yet they held the answer to his destiny in life. Therefore, they were as important to him as life itself. Yeah. He profited by these two dramatic experiences because he analyzed them and found the lesson they taught. There's where most people make their mistakes. They don't analyze the failure in any way or the temporary defeat, and they don't learn from it so they can move forward. So what do? They go through life the same shit, different day. Same old, gotta make the donuts. If same old's not getting it done for you, then change the shit or change the day. Okay? Analyzed them and found the lesson they taught. But what of the man who has neither the time nor the inclination to study failure in search of knowledge that may lead to success? Where and how is he to learn the art of converting defeat into stepping stones to opportunity? In answer to these questions, this book was written. The answer called for a description of 13 principles. But remember, as you read, the answer you may be seeking to the questions which have caused you to ponder over the strangeness of life may be found in your own mind through some idea, plan, or purpose which may spring into your mind as you read. That's why I've studied. See, this book hasn't changed. Ladies and gentlemen, I can promise you this book has not changed in 26 years that I've been reading it every day. I have. Every time I go through this book, I'm a little bit of a different person. I find something that I've never seen before. It took 19 years for me to see one sentence that changed the way I studied the book. 19 years. I can tell you where the sentence is, and if you'll stick with me as we go through this series, I'll make sure that I point it out. By the way, push the like button, push that subscribe button, push the share button, the notification button, push every damn button that's over there. And we'll invent a few buttons that ain't even there yet. Push those too. Because we want to share this information with people all over the world to help them truly learn to think and grow rich. Because without the think part, there is no growing rich, not in any area of life. Mini tangent there, but do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, notification button, like, share, comment, leave me a comment. If you don't like what we're doing, tell me. If I need to do something different, tell me. We'll read the comments, okay? Where was we? But where was we? Apologize. Off on a tangent. Once again, the answer calls for a description of the 13 principles, but remember, The answers you may be seeking to the questions which have caused you to ponder over the strangeness of life may be found in your own mind. In your own mind. Through some idea, plan, or purpose which may spring into your mind as you read. One sound idea is all that one needs to achieve success. One sound idea. Amazon.com, one sound idea. Apple computers, Apple technology, one sound idea. Good gosh, Ford Motor Company, one sound idea. Go on and on and on, man. Tesla, one sound idea. Chick-fil-A, one sound idea. You have these ideas inside of you. Most of the people who took those ideas and ran with them, they didn't have anything to start with. So don't let that be your excuse. He says, before we go any further in our approach to the description of these principles, we believe you are entitled to receive this important suggestion. When riches begin to come, they come so quickly in such great abundance that one wonders where they have been hiding during all those lean years. This is an astounding statement, and all the more so when we take into consideration the popular belief that riches come only to those who work hard and long. He says, when you begin to think and grow rich, you will observe that riches begin with a state of mind, with definiteness of purpose, with little or no hard work. You and every other person ought to be interested in knowing how to acquire that state of mind which will attract riches. 1937, he wrote that. I spent 25 years in research, analyzing more than 25,000 people, because I too wanted to know how wealthy men become that way. Without that research, this book could not have been written. He says here, take notice of a very significant truth. The business depression started in 1929 and continued on to an all-time record of destruction until sometime after President Roosevelt entered office. We're going back to the Great Depression, ladies and gentlemen. If you've never heard of it, I understand that, but you've probably heard of the one that took place, 2008? Yeah, 2007 to 9? 2006, the real estate market collapsed, right? Okay. Excuse me. Then the depression began to fade into nothingness. Just as an electrician in a theater raises the light so gradually that darkness is transmuted into light before you realize it, so did the spell of fear in the minds of the people gradually fade away and become faith. What's going on in our world right now in this fear thing versus faith thing when it comes to some certain pandemic thing? Shoot, wow. He says, observe very closely. As soon as you master the principles of this philosophy and begin to follow the instructions for applying those principles. Without the instructions and application, don't bother mastering them. Don't study them. Your financial status will begin to improve, and everything you touch will begin to transmute itself into an asset for your benefit. Impossible? Not at all. Yeah, you can have your cake and eat it too. You're okay. Says one of the main weaknesses of mankind is the average man's familiarity with the word impossible. He knows all of the rules which will not work. He knows all of the things which cannot be done. This book was written for those who seek the rules which have made others successful and are willing to stake everything on those rules. I'm absolutely have done that. I staked everything in my life on those rules. No question about it. It says a great many years ago, I purchased a fine dictionary. The first thing I did with it was to turn to the word impossible and neatly clip it out of the book. He says that would not be an unwise thing for you to do. Get rid of it. He says success comes to those who become success conscious. Failure comes to those who indifferently allow themselves to become failure conscious. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, most of us were programmed that way. You've got to work really, really hard if you want to earn more money. A lot of work, a lot of work, a lot of work. It says, the object of this book is to help all who seek it to learn the art of changing their minds from failure consciousness to success consciousness. The shifting of the TV screen that we're constantly watching, and we don't even know we're watching it. That's all it really is. It's so elementary simple. What Napoleon Hill is going to take us through. Absolutely elementary simple. He says another weakness found in altogether too many people is the habit of measuring everything and everyone by their own impressions and beliefs. We'd never do that. Some who will read this will believe that no one can think and grow rich. They cannot think in terms of riches because their thought habits have been steeped in poverty, want, misery, failure, and defeat. Have you ever listened to the conversations that take place? He says, these unfortunate people remind me of a prominent Chinese who came to America to be educated in American ways. He attended the University of Chicago. I love this analogy. It says, one day President Harper met this young Oriental man on campus, stopped to chat with him for a few minutes and asked what had impressed him as being the most noticeable, I can't talk today, the most noticeable characteristic of the American people. Why, he exclaimed, the queer slant of your eyes. Your eyes are off slant. What do we say about Oriental people from the Orient? What do we say? Napoleon says, we refuse to believe that which we do not understand. We foolishly believe that our own limitations are the proper measure of limitations. No, they're not. He says, sure, the other fellow's eyes are off slant because they are not the same as ours. So everybody's got to be the same as us? Well, that's some arrogance right there, folks. Millions of people look at the achievements of Henry Ford after he has arrived and envy him because of his good fortune or luck or genius or whatever it is that they credit Ford's fortune. About the ability to know what the hell he wanted and then the backbone to go get it without violating the rights of others. Oh, imagine that. Can't do that. I love this story. A few years back, Henry Ford decided to produce his now famous V8 motor. Remember, he wanted his V8 motor. He was going to have a V8 motor. And the really smart people, the engineers, the one that went to college and that stuff, they said, impossible, can't be done. You'll never get 8 cylinders cast in one block. It cannot be done. Henry said, great, do it anyway. There was nothing else for them to do if they were to remain on the Ford staff. 6 months go by, nothing happened. The engineers tried every conceivable plan. They tried everything, couldn't get it done. At the end of the year, Ford checked with them again. Nope, still can't figure it out. I said, go ahead, continue. If they want to keep their job, they don't have a choice. Now, put yourself in the shoes of one of those engineers, the smart guys. They went to school, right? And here's Henry Ford, the guy that quit school. And he's telling you, do it anyway. Well, this guy's nuts, man. So they went ahead. They didn't have a choice. And then, as if by a stroke of magic, the secret was discovered. I could be wrong, but there are V8 engines in the world today, V8, V10, V12. Cylinders as big as this room. It's crazy, man. But the smart people told him impossible. He says the story may not be described with minute accuracy, but the sum and substance of it is correct. He says, deduce from it, you who wish to think and grow rich, the secret of the Ford millions, if you can. You will not have to look very far. Henry Ford is a success because he understands and applies the principles of success. One of these is desire. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the next chapter. That's our next video. It's going to be on desire. And there's a 6-step process in there. Join us for that video. I have a gift for every one of you. Shoot me an email. I'll shoot you a gift. It's a step-by-step how to do the 6 steps. More on that in the next video, though. Excuse me. The story, he understands and applies the principles of success. One of them, desires, knowing what one wants. We have to know what we want. I don't know what I want. Well, excuse me, how are you going to ask for it? If you don't know what you want, how can you ask for it? You can't. Henry Ford. Fast forward to Elon Musk. Fast forward to Jeff Bezos, Amazon.com. Fast forward to Apple. Fast forward to Microsoft. Fast forward to any of the mega wealthy in today's world. They knew what they wanted. They knew what they wanted. What do you want? What do you really want? Not what do you think you can have because, I am getting nothing to eat in life. No. No excuses. What do you really want? What do you really want? The introduction goes on, but basically that's the nuts and bolts of it. You can accumulate anything you want. those stories, the 3 feet from gold, the story of the little girl, the story of this Barnes guy, these are all real events that took place. Now, it's way back then. It's way, way, way back. I get it. But what events have taken place recently that led people in that same direction? So do me a favor. Push that subscribe button, push that notification button. You don't want to miss when we start with the principles of the book. We're going to go into the principles next. The first one being desire. What do you really want? And I'd hate for you to miss that when we put it out. Not only do you want to have it, you want to share it with everybody. Let me ask you a question. If somebody were to tell you that you could have $100,000 a month every month, we're just using money right now, okay? But related to relationships or whatever. But you had to follow 6 basic steps. Would you follow? My bet is you would. If you were going to bake a cake or maybe brownies, you're gonna bake some brownies, comes in a brownie box, you know, one of those boxes has brownies in. And on the back, it had 4 steps or 6 steps. And on the back, it said to put that oven at, let's say, 375 degrees. I don't know anybody that would say, you know what, I want the brownies done a heck of a lot faster. I'm gonna put it at 450. And I just don't think that would happen. You know what? I need them to cook a little bit longer. 375, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm gonna put on 200. I don't think so. If it said add 1 egg, what would you do? Probably add 1 egg. So ladies and gentlemen, as we get into the next chapter, make sure that you follow the instructions. It's simple. Very, very simple, very basic. It's not hard to do. Push the subscribe button, push the like button, share us with everybody you know. We greatly appreciate you taking the time to be here. And as always, Joe, thank you. If it weren't for Joe, we wouldn't be here doing this. So everybody say thank you to Joe. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, we wish for this day to be the very best day you have ever experienced in this game we call life. Yesterday doesn't matter. Tomorrow isn't here. You can't do a damn thing about it except plan for it. However, today, right now, you can do something. You can allow it to be the best you've ever experienced. It's just so simple to decide that. When you put your head on the pillow tonight, ladies and gentlemen, please do so with a mind full of peace, peace of the mind. Calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. And may God bless each and every one of you. Have a fabulous, fabulous day.